Allison. This is Straight Outta BS podcast, and this is you want to go by Elizabeth or what?
We can do my first name. We can be casual. It's Allison.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, go ahead and introduce yourself, or however you want to tell your story. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, part of it is honestly, I'm more of a. So I do mostly research. I mean, of course, I'm a survivor. I went to one of those, garbage places that shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
But I felt I've realized over the past few years that my calling, and I basically do research of various things, but I've been honed in and focusing in on the T.T.I as a whole.
Yeah.
And putting that together in a really objective way that anyone can understand.
Okay.
Because that doesn't exist. There's not just a really bare clinical looking phone book of all these places. And there needs to be. I mean, you've got ones of all the restaurants and they all have to have a score, and you can find that much easier than you can find a place to forever change your child's life. That's such a weird concept to me. But at any rate, to give a little bit of background, I went to I guess the keyword would be program, and it was a WASP offshoot. And actually, they tried to they did change their name, and they did it like they weren't gonna get caught. Like they did it like somebody who just farted and acted like they didn't do it. They're like, that wasn't us. We're this other place. I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
So because this is no longer their name, it was called Spring Ridge Academy, but no longer. So
they just rebranded.
Yeah, they just renamed themselves. I'm like, you think I don't recognize that yard? Like,
that's what a lot of these places do, and they think people won't notice. It's like, bruh, I know what you're doing.
Yeah, especially now that because when it first started out, these places barely had websites. The websites they had were atrocious, so it was easy. I mean, it was harder to kind of compare that. But now with that being a key part of their marketing and being able to, continue to do their great emotional grift, as I call it, they have to put themselves out there online and show pictures of the facility or at least some stock image that's close enough. Oh, kitty. Oh.
Yeah. This is Lilith Cleopatra Morningstar. This is my.
I had my my doggo out here, and he just decided to not be a part of this anymore. I have a Malinois mix.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love animals.
Yeah, but they changed their name. I'm just like, that was not slick. That was absolutely not slick. And if anything, it kind of compromised them more because now they share an office with a bunch of other former WASPs or WASP schools that are now closed. And I'm just like you just played yourself. Are you serious? So,
and also, why would you even feel like you need to change the name in the first place?
And that is a good question. Like, why? What's wrong with the old name? Well, when you search the thing that, the autofill after it is either abuse or lawsuit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would basically be their reasoning. But I've been so interested in, because when I do try to explain what happens at these places, what they do, what about it is so awful. Aside from examples that were in the Turley lawsuit, which are there's no debating that, obviously, but why it is that you have to have evidence-based therapy to you, you can't just make shit up, which is what they do. A lot of these places do, and it's really weird. And some people, like, I'll try to tell some people, I'm like, yeah, one day, I mean, if they think that you're out for attention or out for someone's approval or whatever, they may not let you talk to them, like, and put you on silence. They're like, they are, you know, they might not let you talk to anyone. And they're like, they do that? That's allowed? I'm like, they do it. Like, they get away with, like, it's just mind blowing. But yeah, that's a thing. And when that's disclosed, like, because eventually a parent will find out, like, during their child's day, like, that kind of thing happened. But giving it to them piecemeal in that way isn't as unsettling.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
whereas it's like, oh, you know, you had my daughter in isolation for 3 days, like, okay, that would be, you know, obviously, but it's not quite the whole, like, not being able to talk to people thing. It's just like, oh, well, I mean, if she had a sore throat. So there's a very particular way that this is executed. It is very much thought out. It's been perfected. That's why they've done it for so long, is because it is a method that works, and that's what's so unfortunate about it.
Well, yeah, and I'm pretty sure that this has echoes of MK Ultra and a bunch of, like, mind control programs in it too. Like, just like the basis, like, I feel like they get a lot of their, well, I've read some shit, like, they describe some of the same kind of tactics they used in the program that they did with MK Ultra.
Well, to actually where it started before that, and where it, you know, how it got to be within MK Ultra itself, is it was originally the intelligence gathered from the Korean War of what Chinese communists would do to American prisoners of war.
Yeah.
Like that, the term brainwashing wasn't a term until that time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was necessarily coined by a particular person, but the first person to use it in an academic way was Robert J. Lifton.
Okay, that sounds really familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, like I have, like, the digital version of his book, Thought Reform, and like I forget what it is, but it is basically thought reform.
Coercive something. It's thought reform and coercive.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, I've heard the title.
Yeah, it came out in the 50s. But yeah, they take, like, you know, and he talks about what they did to get Americans to turn against their own country and also turn against other soldiers who weren't complying.
And what did they do, for people that don't know? What did they do?
So a lot of it is taking away your basic needs, like, and putting you in stressful situations, which this is on a very instinctual primal level. So, you know, being without sleep for extended periods of time, being in certain stress positions, you know, not being able to eat, like, even just forms of, like, water torture, for example. That over time will just wear you down. Like, that's what it's meant to do, and it's what will have you comply. Also, hearing your your fellow soldiers, knowing that there's, like, hearing them suffer and knowing that that's something that they're going through, that is impactful. Yeah, especially in the beginning, or knowing that they have turned against you, like, kind of like feeding them different stories. But here's something that is, like, directly like the same exact thing that they do. So they'll have you admit things that are way worse than what is actually true. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a practice.
Or that it's flat out false, or flat out false stuff.
Yeah. I mean, they'll have you, like, they would have you confess to things that you didn't do, that were way exaggerated. And that is the same for programs. I mean, a lot of them. Because then it sounds like, oh, well, then this was a good idea. Like, this justifies these really weird means that we're utilizing now.
It's almost like gaslighting yourself.
Yeah.
In a way. You know what I mean?
I mean, it essentially is. Like, it's... Sorry. It essentially is. I mean, you're basically, and this is what gets to me, is that there is a phrase that's utilized in these trainings called "you create your own reality."
Yep.
That's not a healthy...
No, because if you were raped, right? And like in my situation, I was raped when I was 7, right? So if I go with that way of thinking, then it was my fault. I brought that on myself. It's all my fault. You know what I mean? Like that's...
And I mean, they might even go as far to say, like, you know, say that you take the victim role, or there's all these things that are utilized to make it seem like what you chose or things that you did in your life resulted in trauma that has happened to you, which is absolutely factually inaccurate. Like, that just is not the case. And it's abuse. Like, that's just flat out abuse.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even in some of the trainings. So, and when I refer to that, just for the audience, basically what I refer to is the therapeutic backbone of a lot of these places, because it's kind of what that fills in and structures how things are supposed to be, and then they give you this condensed version of it over 3 or 4 days. And it's instrumental to progressing through the program. And it also it's an endorphin rush when you're done with it, and it's specifically set up to be like that. It's supposed, so then even though what just happened was really actually awful, when it's over, you'll have an intense euphoria.
Well, you've just released a bunch of psycho-emotional energy, which in itself, that feels crazy, man.
I mean,
like
you've had your physical limitations pushed, like you've been like stressed in every way imaginable, and then there's this kind of the sense of relief, and then even praise.
Yeah.
Like, because what is the term that, like, the coined term? It's not showering somebody, but basically like kind of rewarding them. There's like a specific term for this, but essentially rewarding them and saying like, oh, you did so well, this is great, like you're amazing, blah blah blah. Whereas 2 days earlier they were telling you that, oh look, you only care about yourself.
Yeah.
It's just like, damn, I really changed in 2 days. Like, or your opinion of me did.
Well, it also makes people believe, I feel like, that shit can be fixed like that. Like, you should be able to, like in a 3-day seminar, that my life's fixed. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it doesn't, and it can't.
So, it can, but
I mean,
you have to put in the work.
You can't force someone to have a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Like, you can't force that. And if you do, it's not meaningful. It really doesn't serve a purpose. And if it does, it serves one of trauma.
Yeah.
Like, you have to figure out what in your life gives you purpose. Like, that has to be, it can't be enforced upon you. So, especially, so I forget, you went to like specifically a W.W.A.S.P program.
I went to Spring Creek.
Okay. So, and just to kind of cover the foundation of it, the first training is kind of to get people used to the whole like idea of what you're doing, and then things that kind of go on within the program itself. And the second one is where they want to really be able to mold you into something to show to your parents so they keep paying.
Yeah.
And that's where they have you kind of go through these very, they kind of mold you into what they think is the good product that your parents will be happy they purchased. And that's such a weird way. That's such a weird language for me to use, but that's literally kind of what it is.
They break you down to build you back up into their image of what they want you think that you should be, or think that a good citizen is, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, their idea of, you know, what's kind of acceptable, like what your parents would like. And that was something like little, you know, anecdotal with me. That was what was so difficult for me, is because I'm such a weirdo. Like, you know, I have interests in things that, you know, people are like, what? And it's just, I get fascinated, and I like focus on it and like research about it, and like go through a whole thing for like where I'll be on a kick for like a month, like
Go
looking
down
at
a rabbit hole. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
love doing that.
Yeah, too. Yeah.
And I also am, you know, I present myself in interesting ways, but it's just kind of it's just for funsies. Like it's not like a huge like defining thing about me. But I had a really hard time with that also at the time. And I think that this is a case for a larger percentage of young girls that go through these facilities, that is that, and especially during puberty, you're question like you're having your sexuality develop. And if you go to an all-girls school, it's it's kind of a natural thing to form an attachment to people that you're going through a difficult experience with. Like you'll do that more so than if you weren't experiencing that with them. And so it's more likely that those kind of relationships will happen. Um, but and that's very natural, and it shouldn't be shunned. Like even just kind of like passing notes and like that, I remember that was a thing that I did. Like that was one of the things that like made me really nervous. I did a whole lot of note passing with someone. um but that's something that's so inherent with a lot of people, and they have to ignore it entirely. They
Yeah.
have to stifle it, and it's really it's so damaging. It's incredibly damaging. Like I think one of the reasons why I was a double whammy kid. I got sent back. But when I actually first graduated, I think one of the reasons why I did is because I made it a big deal to go to prom with a guy and like have like a back and forth talking to him.
Yeah.
Like, and
I
that's so
think
messed up.
I think it's also important because I feel like, not that, telling secrets can be good or it can be bad, but just the fact that you could do it if you wanted to. You could invest in somebody and be like, look, this is a secret of mine. I'm going to keep this between us two. That in itself is like kind of part of building up your whole autonomy and like your sense of self too. Being able, like having the ability to share a secret if I want to, and not have to share the shit with everybody and be put on blast for it. Like that's part of autonomy, I feel like, and growing up, like I just feel, yeah, just suppressing shit from people is just not good. Like,
yeah, and I mean that gets into boundaries, and that's ironic because they make such a huge focus on that. And but there's so many boundaries that are crossed there. I mean, it was that whole part of it, that whole aspect of it, and I don't know how it would differ, like how it looks at like a co-ed place. I'm sure that they do have measures of separating genders. And was yours co-ed or?
yes. And I
Okay.
will say something, on the lower levels, like you're not allowed to, like, over facility wide, you're not supposed to look at girls or interact with them at all, right? When you get on the upper levels, though, you get into an upper level family. You get like a different family and whatever. And once you do that, then you can have mixed groups. And so that's like when you could like actually like give feedback to girls, have girls give you feedback. But like it was only in that group setting. And once you left there, you couldn't like talk to them or anything like that. But it was crazy. It was like they gave us this setting, and like when you're in group and you're sharing, like you're going to get close to somebody just because you're sharing with them, right? So
Yeah.
it's hard to like, but oh no, you can share in the group, but oh no, 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 don't even try and talk to them. Don't even try to have some sort of like friendship or relationship outside of this group. So like, it like confuses, it's like confusing for the brain, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, it sends such a screwed up message. It's like, you know, you can't be trusted to, we're not going to let you interact with this person elsewhere because clearly you can't be trusted to be like, that sends such an awful message, like that you can't control yourself or whatever, and that's so messed up. Um,
and it also
yeah.
just assumes the worst, I feel like, too. It assumes, like, in my opinion, it assumes that we either want to have sex with them or fucking kiss them or, like, like hug them, like hold them, have some sort of sensual experience with them when it's not like that for everybody. Sometimes I just wanted to have a conversation with somebody, you know what I mean, of the opposite sex. Like,
Yeah, and
so,
I mean, at those ages, that's when those kinds of things should be happening. Like just
yeah.
simple, like flirting or, having your first kiss or whatever. Like that's when that stuff happens.
Yeah, that's when you
So,
normally be in high school.
mhm,
Like, and the whole experience of that. And like
yeah,
for me, like, when I got back home, like I felt like, my literally because my teenage years had been taken away from me. I didn't
yeah,
have a fucking, my teenage years was the program. Like
mhm.
that's what, defined me. So I didn't like, it was so hard reintegrating into society afterwards because I didn't know where I fit in, like, or anything. Like, it was hard.
Yeah. Then that's honestly, that's what kind of got me. Like I graduated from I got sent to the program when I was 14, almost 15. And I graduated right before my junior year. And I actually got accepted to an arts academy, like one of the top 3 in the country.
Awesome.
And it was like a big deal. And I was really excited about it. But I had no idea how to interact or just be, because everything I had known up until that point was so foreign and bizarre and broken down and judged and picked apart that I constantly did that to myself. Like I just was really, really harsh on myself. And it made it to where I doubted everything I did because, I was gaslit so much. Like I would think, oh, I'm doing this great thing. And I was really happy about it. And then they're like, no. And I'm like, what? And so it
Yeah.
would just confuse me so much. I'm like, okay, so what is me doing well? Like what? And so I never thought I was. And I, it sabotaged what could have been an amazing opportunity for me.
Yeah.
And it did to such a point that I even attempted to take my own life.
Yeah.
And that's what got me sent back.
Oh wow. So of
Because
course,
clearly it did such a
don't get her
good job the
therapy.
first time.
Don't get her therapy, don't, God forbid, you get her therapy and actually try something different. It's like maybe if she graduated and she came back and she's having quote unquote what you think is issues again, just send her back to the fucking same place. That
Yeah.
it didn't work the first time, it'll work the second time. That's fucked up.
And it was pretty clear that they understood that. And basically my mother just didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to be a parent to me, which she knows how to be a parent to my sister. She did not know how to be a parent to me, which it wasn't like it was something complicated. It, it's, but she just, she wanted me somewhere where she knew that I would be watched. And that's what the second, the part 2 electric boogaloo part of it came out to be. It was basically me waiting out until I was 18. And
Yeah.
the program and the woman who ran it they knew that. They knew that I'm just there, that I'm not really doing any kind of work or anything. I'm just hanging out there until I'm 18. And they were happy to take my mother's money. Or really, I found out it was mine. It was my college trust fund.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, my parents spent all the college, or just all their money pretty much in general, like half their money's gone. And then I was just, they try and, make me feel guilty for it sometimes. I'm like, hey, I wasn't the one that sent me off to boarding school. I was completely against that shit. And then they did, my mom at least gets really pissed off if I say that. So I try not to say that, but it's kind of true. Like,
yeah. Yeah. And there's also, so this is where, for me, and I don't know, maybe you have experienced this to a degree, but it's, so whenever I basically left and was on, like, I left the program and was just like hit the ground running. I was on my own, taking care of myself from that point on.
The first time you got out, the first time you graduated?
The second, because I was 18.
Okay.
Yeah. So as an adult, I was on my own. I had an apartment that I shared. I was paying rent, got a job. Like, after that, because, obviously in order to afford these places, people have to come from at least like a medium income family at the very least. But most come from much more. And I like, so when a lot of the experience that people have, like, after the program and even for quite an extended period of time, they still have some sense of resource, right? I didn't have that. I had to figure out, how do I survive now knowing nothing? And that's probably what has affected me the strongest out of anything.
Do you mean just not being able to, like, just reintegrating into society and, like, living normally? Is that what you're getting at, or like what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, a lot of other survivors will still, like, they'll have their family or have like family friends or whatever, that if something were to happen or like their health got bad, like they would be there for them for support.
Oh yeah.
I lost that.
Okay.
Like, my mother was basically like, okay, I'm not legally responsible to have to deal with you anymore. So, bye.
Okay, so you pretty much just had to teach yourself everything.
Yeah, and I mean, this is still basically what I experience today. Is I don't have that sense of security. Like, I don't have, I for like a while, it was mostly during my early 20s, and even times recently, like, homelessness was like, that could be a reality for me at any moment. And for a lot of people, they don't, that's not something that they would have to deal with or ever understand. And I mean, not couch surfing. Like, it was difficult, because I went to university for a bit of time, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I just tried to figure things out, and I wasn't safe. Like, I was just by myself and didn't have anyone to really rely on. And that was something that was really difficult for me. And something that I think is a rather unique experience. It's been hard for me to find others that have had that particular kind of struggle afterwards.
Well, I will say I'm 12 months sober. I just smoke weed. I consider that sober. That's my sobriety. But I've been homeless several times, like, and like, I mean real homeless. Like, I was living in a tent and fucking almost got, I don't really want to go into it, but I pretty much anything you can think of bad that would happen to somebody, like, it's probably been attempted on me when I was homeless. And yeah, it's not fun, and I'm actually, like, I'm in a place right now, but like, because I have a mental disability. I was born with it, so I'm working on getting on housing and essential needs through DSHS, and then eventually SSI, because I just can't work a regular job. I have really bad social anxiety, and there's a lot of mental stuff that just gets in the way of that. And so yeah, I definitely feel you. I definitely understand. I could, maybe next month I might not even have a place. I don't know yet. I hope I can find some way to pay my rent. But yeah, so I understand you completely, and like it scares the shit out of me, honestly, because like I'm fucking sober. Like if I fucking end up homeless and my fucking cat, like, bro, and all my shit, like, bro, it's gonna be so hard to like just keep my head straight. Like if that happens, man. So it's just like, yeah, it's hard, and I feel it. I feel you on that.
Yeah, and I've noticed that a lot of survivors afterwards, that it's not uncommon for them to experience either addiction or domestic violence or abusive relationships, with the latter being kind of more likely because they're kind of conditioned to that. They know, like they're used to narcissists. And that's so, like, that's really sad. Like it's terrible, but they're more likely to be in that kind of dynamic because that's how that relationship works in programs between the student, as it were, and like staff, or what at mine they called program team. Like
Yeah.
that was all the head honchos, right? Yeah. So it just, and I mean, there are people that will handle it, like, and go through that sort of struggle and come out like they're badass. Like they really truly embody what it is to be a survivor of multiple things. Like their resilience is so admirable, right? But yeah, like that's what I really am interested in speaking with parents. Like that's, like, I'm not really someone that, as far as like kind of I guess the advocacy work I do, I'm not someone that's, and this makes you sound mean at first, but I'm not interested in providing survivor resources because I already think that people are already on top of that. Like, I want to understand the process that happens of someone getting sent to these places. What the parent thinks. And one that is of, I want to say of kind of sound mind, like, if they really knew, they wouldn't have done it, sort of thing. And they were duped, like they really thought they were doing the right thing and they didn't know. Like, I want to know, like, I want to see that grift. I want to see the way that it's done, and in multiple ways, because I think that that's also part of the awareness that needs to be brought in order to bring it into this, is to know what are their tricks, what are their methods.
And what were they told too? What were they being told? Because there's like 75 or more % of fucking parents that, like, a lot of people don't understand, the wool was pulled over their eyes, man. Like, they literally did not know. And then there was like, the 20 or 25% or more that, they didn't know, they just didn't want their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, there's it. And the thing is, when you're in a predicament, like when a parent's in a predicament like that, when you're emotionally vulnerable, and this is the case for people who join cults, like, it's not, there are smart people that join cults. It's not because people are,
Scientology.
Yeah, like they're in a place where they're seeking an answer and somebody is telling them that they have it. Mm-hmm. That they have the solution that they desperately need, and they're in a position where, I mean, do you know who, does the name Jilly Juice ring any bells?
Not really.
Okay, kind of. So it's this woman that pretty much made her own snake oil, so to speak. She made this like rotten cabbage drink, like cabbage juice drink, that is loaded with salt, and consuming the amount that she suggests people do as a sort of cure-all is can be lethal. Like it can essentially, when you have so much salt in your body at that point, like in your blood, it can give you a stroke, it can give you seizures. Like it's really, really bad for you. Like you're not supposed to have that much salt. And you're also missing a lot of other key nutrients as well. And she has her own site and all this other stuff, but she's probably been at least for the majority responsible for several deaths. Like, but people come to her and a lot of them are they're dying and they don't know what to do. And I mean, the harsh reality of it may be that they are terminal, like, but they just want to do whatever. They want a miracle. And it's so disgusting that like these kind of people exist that are like, yeah, here, and just make up whatever. And it the grift works. And that same method is what these places use. And the people that, the educational consultants, the helplines that route you to whatever facility is in their group of ones that they represent, the ones that run the programs, groups like NatSap, who are like, oh, we don't accredit programs, but we sure as hell promote them and validate them, which really is kind of the same thing to a lot of people.
It's just gaslighting and doublespeak. They're just saying it a different way or trying to say that they didn't say it when they said it.
What's interesting, so in 2007, during the congressional hearings, when they started addressing all of this finally, they brought forth Jan Moss, who actually worked at the program I went to. So that was glorious to watch because she got ripped apart. But they were like, she basically said that they didn't have the whole requirement of them having to have particular licenses, and that by basically 2 years in the future, they'll have it established. And if a facility still doesn't have it, then they can't be a part of NatSap. To this day, that is still not enforced. And that was in 2007.
Well, they're probably paying them off. They're probably paying them off to say oh yeah, make this last hella long, or drag it out or some shit,
Basically, because it doesn't, it would work against them. Like it would, yeah. And they really want it to be left up to the state to decide.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the state, like when something happens, like whenever there's an instance of like a specific instance of abuse, like an event or whatever, they tell the parents to send complaints to places like NatSap, to internal organizations, so that they can keep it away from law enforcement. And it's not, even if they do report it to local or state police, many times those local and state police are, in bed with the facilitators of the program. That's especially true for the programs in Missouri. Like, oh my God, there's so many people in that bed, which is interesting because they're like super Christian, but maybe that's not really that surprising. And then the others are a bunch of Mormons. I'm just like, damn, y'all really love this bed sharing and nepotism. And that's what also makes it so easy to find people that are connected, because I'm like, it's just your sister.
Yeah.
This wasn't hard to find. You hire your family, and that's what they do. They pass programs down to like their sons, even if they have experience with nothing.
Same shit that the royal families do, kind of. They keep it in their family. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's something of a monarchy, I guess. Um, but it's the thing is that none of these people have a background in mental health or, at least psychology, or at most they'll be like an LCSW or a licensed clinical social worker. That's usually what you'll see. And honestly, I think that really should be the bare minimum and kind of like the exception sometimes, not what you typically find. I think that there should be people that have like their masters at least, that are therapists, and especially running like the clinical directors and such. But and I mean where they've gotten their education. It's so interesting to see how many of them went to Brigham Young. There's a lot. But yeah, they're just, even with some of the research I did the other day, a guy that opened a program, his bio starts off by saying like he got his start in fast food. Like, oh, that's impressive. Like, that's something you want to put on here? Like, and yeah, that's what was on there. And so I looked into the other people and then found that their accountant was him and his buddies were like sued by the FTC for like massive fraud by running a bunch of like online gambling schemes. Like that. It was like, are you serious right now? Like the people that are handling the money for these places, like they stole like, I think it was like $50 million from people. Like, and I mean, that's not the information that's available when parents are going online to look this stuff up. And it should be. It should be there. Like, I can dig around and find stuff like, a lot easier than most people can swipe. That's why I do it. But that needs to be all together in one place.
Well, that's also, I feel like we have a problem as a society. A lot of us are just like stuck in the dream state. Like we're just not awake. Like we're literally like, we'd rather just be spoon fed, like, oh, by the news, like, oh, this is what's happening, instead of like doing our own research and like looking into shit ourselves. Like a lot of us do that. I'm not saying everybody does, but there's a lot of us that still do that. And like, they're just really not awake. Like they're not awake. And like, so for people like that, I feel like, yeah, definitely. I mean, those are going to be the hardest people to reach.
Well, I mean, it's the unfortunate downfall of critical thinking.
Yeah, sure. It's pretty much non-existent. I mean, there's there are some people that use critical thinking, but I feel like it's a lost art.
Yeah, I mean, everyone should be using critical thinking.
Yeah, it should be taught in school. It should be taught in school.
Yeah, to know that, whenever you look at a situation or what you're presented with, you need to be able to gather as much information about it as possible, look at it in as many angles as possible, don't make a rash decision, get other people's opinions, especially those that are professionals in particular fields. Like that needs to happen. That's what I want to help make possible, because I want professionals and experts in particular fields to look at the data I collect, and I want their input on it. Like, hey, here's a practice one of these places they utilize for their students. How, with your 20 years of experience as, a child psychiatrist, how do you think that's going to turn out? Like, that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
So that it's looked at and like critically, and it's just presenting you the actual information. Like I want to be really careful to not, like, I'm not including reviews or testimonials, because you can find those in other places, but also I want it to be clear that I'm just presenting the basic information, and that I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything, because frankly, I don't have to.
Yeah. Well, the truth will speak for itself,
Mm-hmm.
and like facts are facts, and you gotta. But with like to take us from a scientific approach, you have to be able to prove that stuff. So that's why it's important. You know what I mean? And say, you know, and I feel like that's why it's important to get like solid facts, is because testimonials is somebody's experienced their story. You know, but you can't necessarily prove that unless you were there. And even if you were there, you're still just the bystander. You know what I mean? So if you're looking at it from a scientific perspective, that'd be the best way to go about it, would be facts and things you can.
Yeah. And what the way
I'm
that
not saying that people are liars about their story at all. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that facts are easier to prove, because we can say, oh no, this is here, I got it from here, this shows, this proves it. Bang.
Yeah, the way that I want to go about doing that, at least one of the first ways, is police reports. I want to, and I did this. I did this for Spring Ridge Academy. I have the police reports, all of them, since the day they opened until mid 2021. Now, you know, and I want to still be respectful of people's privacy. Yeah. And not put too much out there, even if I just redact a lot. But what I want to do with that is say, okay, out of all these reports, of the case of the ones that deal with like a runaway, like how many of those happened in each year, and let's make a chart and see like how that skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like that's really useful intel, because it's like, more and more of these students are running away from the place. Clearly it's not getting better, or they have to stay there. Yeah, I mean, that, and also, I mean, so that's more the criminal side, and then also the civil side with the, you know, lawsuits that are, so anything that, because what I do is called, I'm an OSINT analyst, which is open source intelligence. Anything that you can find publicly or through particular databases, using different methods. Like there's some tricks you can do with Google that aren't supposed to really happen, but do. But if you can find it without it being illegal, it's fair game. And because of that, I'm a huge fan of archiving stuff. I'm a huge fan of digging through data dumps, because you find a lot of useful information in that. And one of the really useful things is going through a bunch of old, or even just the legal notes, or the affidavits and everything from the Turley lawsuit, going through all that, because what it contains are people's names, people who worked there. That's one of the.
What is the Turley lawsuit, for those that don't know what it is?
Oh, right. So the Turley lawsuit is probably one of, I think I could say that the most well-known class action lawsuit against any T.T.I facility, and in this case, it was against an organization of them. It was against the W.W.A.S.P programs. I forget exactly how many plaintiffs there were. It was a lot. But the lawsuit itself, the complaint, was about 320 pages, which is very lengthy. And a lot of that is just simply listing the plaintiffs and defendants. But with that also, you're going to have depositions and affidavits attached to it. So like depositions of the Litchfields, which are the people that ran W.W.A.S.P, and, you know, them being questioned under oath, what went on, who worked where, and that helps me piece together, okay, let me build a timeline of the staff of who are at these places. So when they decide to run off and open a place somewhere else, I've got them like documented at least. So I want to be able to connect that. I want that to be easy to connect, because I mean, that's really sketch for someone to trying to be hiding that. That's exactly what needs to be known. Like, oh, this person ran a facility that was, you know, had was rated essentially. Like,
Yeah.
you know, they probably should not work with children ever again, but they do. Right. So,
For sure. For sure. I definitely agree. But you were saying that, and then I stopped you to explain it, and then you were, so what were you saying before? You were talking about that lawsuit.
oh, basically, the ways in which I can gather information to build a comprehensive, like a listing for each facility, past and present, that's just a listing. And I got my board over here, so it says it. So it's the facility listing,
You
and
can show it if you want.
I can't be bothered. I'll just read it. It's a big whiteboard. So the name and location, the date it opened and who opened it, and even if some of the paperwork is with that, like property deeds, that kind of thing. The type of facility is, or the area of focus, like is it religious based? Is it a wilderness program? What, you know, the program and clinical director credentials and background. So like, why should they be trusted with your child? Or why shouldn't they? Treatment modalities and types of evidence-based literature to back those, if any. So what they use, like, you know, they say they can fix your kid. Okay, how are you doing it? And prove to me it's successful. So I'm going to do that, including showing that there's no evidence it's successful, because there's, you know, much that doesn't exist, and also a lot that goes to the contrary. History of all civil and criminal legal action taken against the facility, evaluation and data models from PRRs, which police records, from the local and state, and then state compliance and violation reports, and also seeing how states handle those issues. The way Utah does, it looks like they do their inspections with crayon.
Wow.
They don't have a proper form. Like, it's all just typed by hand. It's really like, what? It blows my mind.
That's crazy.
So
I think you sent me. I think you sent me a picture of it. Is it okay if I upload that with the video?
yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, but like also any like news articles or anything that's been published by someone else, I'll link to, because then, you know, I want to avoid any you know, receiving a bunch of cease and desist for defamation. And an easy way to do that is basically I'm just linking to things that already exist that explain these things.
Yeah.
So
it's not like you're saying it. It's almost doing the same kind of thing they're doing, like gaslighting.
Yeah. So anything that's been published about it, or, you know, and then there's something that's blocked here. Hold on. The digital footprint. So of the specific key players, and that's one of the things that I get really interested in, are the people that are sometimes behind the scenes that people don't realize are playing a huge role. Like the accountants that I looked into that were running a bunch of online scams. But then with that, and this is where I really started to form what the vision that I have and the project that I want to complete, is I want to have info guides. I want there to be something there that helps people understand the information and explains it to them in plain terms. So, you know, kind of the in-depth history of the T.T.I. and its practices, and to divide that into programs and practices, which is actually a similar concept that is already done on a government website, but it's hard to sift through. But they have evidence on this website that shows that scared straight programs do not yield results. If anything, they're detrimental. Like, that data is out there. It's just kind of hard to digest initially. So I want to make that easier for people. And then the services part of the T.T.I, such as transport services, ed consultants, groups like NatSap, etc., archive media. So the videos and such, like documentaries that have been done over time, comparative science, using the Department of Justice, and the GAO, and basically just in good old investigative journalism. But
are you part of the Discord group?
No, I didn't know.
There's a Straight Outta BS podcast official Discord group that I made,
Oh,
and
okay.
it has like a fuckload of different like topics and shit like that. So that might be a place where, because I've been posting like anything that, like, I have different categories like for the different schools, like different parts of the program, like reintegrating into society. Like I have a cult section, I have an MK Ultra section, like, so I just post different articles and things that I know, like in the different places. So that's, isn't that kind of like what you're trying to do, is like put together like something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically. And I've pretty much got the foundation for it.
Cool.
And it's unfortunate because I think that this could be such an amazing collaborative effort between a lot of people, like people that have gathered certain data, or that specifically have connections to a particular, like there's someone that has a lot of stuff on CEDU, and to be able to kind of work with them, but there's some difficulty there, and that's something that's probably been, because it is really, it's rewarding to me to know that I can help make this information available and give parents the data that they need to make an informed decision. But there's a lot of unexpected roadblocks that I've run into, and it's been really surprising to me. So that's been one of the unfortunate parts. But yeah, I basically have been putting this together for almost 2 years, and I have over 20 years experience in website development. So me putting together a site is very easy to do. And I mean, yeah, it's just kind of at this point a matter of getting support for it. And also I don't really want to be like, I don't want the site to be associated with me. Like I want it to be itself.
Yeah, its own thing.
Yeah. But I think that really needs to exist, and that it all just kind of came from the bill that was originally written from the congressional hearings in 2007. And I just looked at the bill and I'm like, wait a minute, I can make a website.
Yeah.
That's accessible and user friendly and has everything on it.
Yeah, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Well, I'll send you a link to the Discord if you want after this is over. And also, I was gonna ask, what's the craziest thing you've read about, or like that you like? What's the craziest dirt you pulled up?
Oh, geez.
Craziest
I
thing.
have to. Oh, that's. Let me just glance over.
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
Everything I have, because I divide things up into news articles, educational consultants, legal federal, related orgs, research studies, seminars, LGAT. A lot of the LGAT stuff is really. Oh, here's one, because this is a reference a lot of people will get. So the movie Fight Club, right? I think that most people have seen it or are kind of aware of what it's about. And a lot of people, like whenever they kind of analyze the film, they go to, and I mean, these themes are present certainly about kind of like masculinity and consumerism and that sort of thing. When, interestingly enough, Chuck Palahniuk, the author of the book, he went through the Landmark Forum training, which is actually previously was known as EST or EST, and off that came LifeSpring, like all these LGATs are large group awareness trainings, which is basically the seminars that they put in programs. Fight Club is about Landmark. And also Werner Erhard, the guy who founded Landmark himself. Marla Singer, one of the characters, is actually a representation of Margaret Singer. You'll never see her and Tyler Durden in the same room at the same time. Like that's one of the plays that they did. Tyler Durden is supposed to represent Werner Erhard, where the character Jack, played by Ed Norton, is representing Werner Erhard before he changed his name, which it was Jack Rosenberg, I believe. So there's like dead on, like also remember, what's the first rule of Fight Club?
Don't talk about Fight Club.
What's the first rule of a seminar?
Don't talk about what's in the seminar. Oh yeah.
When you rewatch the movie, it's like, holy shit. Like it's so dead on. And the guy who wrote this particular article, he also has like his academic focus was also on bipolarity and that particular diagnosis. One of the things that's a huge risk with those seminars for anybody is for people that are bipolar, especially if they've not been diagnosed, it can put them into a manic episode. And
I have bipolar, so
yeah, and a lot of the unfortunate deaths that have occurred for people that like after seminars, like people that take their own lives, it's been found that they were bipolar or they hadn't been diagnosed. Like, yeah, it's a huge risk for people with certain conditions to go through that. I mean, it really is not healthy for anybody. But I've been super fascinated by that part of my research. Because I think when people realize the origins of seminars, which is from the Korean War, then kind of went to MK Ultra. I try not to give too many examples of MK Ultra because I don't want to lose people too early.
yeah.
Usually once I kind of get in, I'm like, okay, so the way that the United States uses this for a little bit, so then I kind of integrate that data. But there's even an article that I have. I'll just read some little excerpts from it, but it's called Psychological Effects of Participation in a Large Group Awareness Training. I don't know if I had to pay for this or not, but it pretty much breaks down like what people experience and especially what they do in a seminar typically, like what is to be expected. And it's all pretty much the same formula. 3 to 5 days, certain exercises, like the connect the dot, connect the 9 dots game. Like, does that, you're familiar with that one?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy that these same things have been utilized, like, that it's just so basic. But I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But then the red black game and giver taker and all these really specific.
Lifeboat.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one
that one still fucked me up.
Yeah, that seems to be the most impactful and traumatizing, especially to children. Like, and that's something that I really want to have people be aware of, is this is something they have us do. Like, that is like a key part. Like, it's not a side quest. Like, this is one of the main bosses here. Like, that we have to, like,
And I will say, I was recently in rehab, and I just want to let people know that it is actually now made it into the rehab scene, because they literally tried to pull that shit. They literally, the second they started doing that and lined up the chairs, I was like, no, bro, I was like, fuck this, I'm out of here. I was like, I'm not doing this shit again. She's like, oh no, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, you don't understand. You don't fucking get it. I've been traumatized by that fucking process. I'm not doing it again. And she's like, well, you have to fucking participate. And I was like, cool, I'm just going to sit here and not even do anything. And she literally made me sit in the shit and do all this shit over again. And this was in rehab. This was for my, like, getting off drugs. So I think it's made it into the rehab scene now, which is really fucking fucked.
Oh, it's made it into public schools.
Really?
There's this, so it's a specific, I forget what they call it, but it's a watered down version, of course. But they've incorporated it into schools, and I have a whole folder on all of that. And it's real bonkers. Like, it's not like, because again, these things, they're not evidence-based. If anything, there's a ton of evidence that says that it yields a negative outcome. Like, this should not be utilized. Yeah, like, it needs, like, it just blows, like, these practices could kind of just be like outlawed, as far as, like, what you can do for therapy, and, like, as far as, like, how they're finally getting around to conversion therapy, like making that illegal. Same should go for these NLP guided exercises, where you have to decide who lives or dies. And what, you're 15, 14 years old? Like, and they make it's way more intense than people would realize up front, because they put you, like, you close your eyes and then you do like a guided hypnosis, and, like, there's a sound system set up, and, like, it's like, that's one of those conditioning ways that they break you down, which, why, it just blows my mind. Why do you want to break down people that are already broken? Like, that's such an, like, just a backwards way of looking at all that. But yeah, there's a lot that I have on LGATs, and I think that that's really important for people to understand, because those can also just, those can get to people, like, even just kind of outside of, like, parents and their children, that can affect, like, families in different ways, by preying on people and getting them to get the rest of their family involved, and to continue going to them and referring more people and helping them run the seminars, which, that's dangerous. Like, did you guys have to staff?
Yeah, I staffed several seminars.
That's so great. Like, the fact that these, you've already got this orchestrated, weird, like, orientation thing, and then you utilize people that have already been through it to help facilitate and add to it. Like, that, what?
I remember when I staffed, though, I rebelled for the first year. And when I finally so I knew what it was like to be on lower levels and, like, get in trouble. I spent most of my time in intervention and study hall until they threatened me with Jamaica. Long story short, but when I got up onto the team, onto the upper levels, finally I was like, okay, cool. Now that I actually have some power, I'm going to actually coach people instead of being an asshole and just, like, being a cop. So I started coaching people because I've been there. I know what the fuck it's like to be on lower levels and like have level 1 0 points. You feel like every fucking day, no matter how hard you try, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, like all like, you know, like never feeling like you can catch a break and shit. So I would coach the people that got fucked with and like made fun of. I'd consequence people that were fucking making fun of them because it's like there's no reason to do that. But also in the seminars, I would coach people. Like when everybody else was running around during the release process yelling like, you're a fucking bitch, like you're a cunt, I was just saying, bro, just keep it up, you're almost done, like just get through this shit. Like people will even tell you, like I had so many people come up to me afterwards and say, your approach was so much better than like everybody else's approach. I'm glad that you took that different approach instead of fucking, you know, like trying to break me down. Because I don't know. I just like once I got power, I was like, look, I could abuse the power, but I'm not going to. I want to help people. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, and even you know that is something that's can be scrutinized. You know, they'll say that you're not holding your peers accountable and blah 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 and all this other shit. It's like, oh come on, like I'm not gonna continue to also belittle them. Like no. But while you're talking, I actually found this is perfect. So I was talking about Robert J. Lifton and his work, and about the whole process of, you know, breaking down someone and, you know, he breaks it down in 12 steps and calls it the death and rebirth. And I want you to hear this and think about how it relates to both seminars and programs kind of as a whole, because it's uncanny. So Lifton's 12 steps of death and rebirth. 1, assault upon identity. During this stage, the identity is attacked. The individual is told that his or her identity is a facade. Prisoners face constant assertions that they were not who they said they were, put through physical and emotional abuse. They broke down, they lost their identity, and they became more under the control of the interrogators. Physical and mental exhaustion was crucial in achieving surrender. Prisoners are described as being between the states of wakefulness and sleep. This assault stage causes the death of the prisoner's identity and is crucial for the steps that follow. 2, the establishment of guilt. Prisoners were made to feel guilt for the things that they had done and the things they failed to do. They had to come up with elaborate confessions of their crimes against the communist government and were heavily abused if their confessions were deemed inadequate. Prisoners became so permeated by the atmosphere of guilt that external accusations became merged with subjective feelings of sinfulness, and they felt that their punishment was deserved. 3, self-betrayal. Involved renouncing people, groups, and behavior which had previously formed a crucial component of their existence. Think non-working people. This included friends, colleagues, and religious beliefs. These people and structures were core to who these prisoners were, and disavowal constituted a betrayal of self. Insidiously, this step was labeled as accepting help or maybe working the program. When applied to a prisoner and helping others when prisoners convince others to renounce their friends and beliefs. 4, breaking point or breakthrough. Total conflict and basic fear. This stage, the prisoner is aware that they've committed crimes, but is unsure of what they are. He's in a situation where he won't back down, so he must admit guilt. They're alienated from psychological support, concurrently put through self-betrayal, confession, and subsequent loss of identity. Lifton explains that this causes one of the most primitive and painful emotions known to man, the fear of total annihilation. 5, leniency and opportunity. At this point, sometimes months into the indoctrination, relief is sought by the prisoner and provided by the interrogators. This is when they start to kind of reward you.
Like, or upper level experience. Mm-hmm. They like put you up on the team and be like,
yeah. They give you what is it? Not permissions, but
privileges.
Like, yeah, you get privileges. While the environment does not relent on its principles, it's insistent that the prisoner is guilty and must confess. It eases up enough for the prisoner to sense permeability between who he was and who he has been asked to become. This sudden friendly treatment, rather than allowing backtracking, facilitates a greater absorption of these new principles. The impact of leniency cannot be overstated. Instead of viewing total annihilation as the only possibility, the prisoners offered, on the condition of a new identity, cessation and consideration, a chance to escape from the horror of the previous months, which is basically to get out and leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Compulsion to confess, number 6. The compulsion to confess begins before there are hints of kindness. Only those who confess can survive. Basically, they keep you, making sure that you're going through it and adhering to it.
Constantly having groups and making you talk about how your issues are resolving, or like how you're feeling now about the same issue, instead of just moving on through it. Yeah.
Yeah. They say this to an identity of a repentant sinner, to identify the evil within himself and break it down and then rebuild it, find their sins and rid them. Lifton's model of brainwashing suggests the death of one identity and the reemergence of another. 7, channeling of guilt. This stage uses the people's standpoint to channel feelings of guilt into a paranoid pseudo-logical system. What up until this point has been unspecific is made to do explicit work for thought reform. Proof of his wrongdoings, and they're condemned, or they condemn themselves. 8, re-education, logical dishonoring. This basically, there's my dog.
Okay.
This is basically, you can't have logic whenever there's something that is a part of brainwashing or thought reform. Logic cannot exist because this is all illogical, essentially. You're convincing someone of something that it doesn't make sense. It's kind of reinforced, teaching them new things, essentially. I'm trying to basically summarize all of this.
You're fine. You can read it.
Yeah, well, I'm condensing it to also make it easier to understand as well. Right. 9, progress and harmony. To sustain the new identity, the prisoner must develop a sense of harmony. As he begins to change, the prisoner receives better treatment. And conforming to this closed system of reasoning holds benefits of his own. The prisoner can experience the deep satisfaction of solving all problems, of group intimacy in living, working, and suffering, of surrendering himself to an all-powerful force and sharing its strength, of laying himself bare in the catharsis of personal confession. 10, final confession, the summing up. This takes the form of a brief statement admitting specific guilt for all the crimes committed. In the end, result of a process of embellished confession shaped by the interrogators, assisted by cellmates, and extracted by the captors over many months. This is what I feel is kind of the summary of a program.
Yeah, totally.
11, rebirth. During rebirth, the prisoner emerges with a new identity. Not only this, but the identity which was broken down during thought reform, for example, a doctor or priest, is allowed to reemerge to some extent. The prisoner is no longer a sinner deserving abuse, but rather a convert whose previous identity is recognized. 12, release. Transition in limbo. Release into an environment which challenges everything a prisoner has been taught, creates a new identity crisis. Prisoners often became caught between worlds, questioning what they had been told. Once more, he underwent a painful identity shift encompassing what he had before, what he had become in prison, and what he was in the process of becoming after release.
Yeah.
Isn't that spooky?
That's crazy.
Like, this is legit. Like, I mean, I think it uses Lifton's work, but this is its own paper. But this is referring to specifically LGATs or the seminars. But that's the process.
It is. To a T, yeah.
Even if you were to go, and this is for anybody who is kind of doubting a bit, which is fine. If you go and look at the websites for these facilities, and you see their their program structure or their level system, you will see something very similar. Like they'll show their phases or like the steps, like what you should expect to be experienced, blah, blah, blah. Like it's similar, which I mean, a lot of people would kind of say like, well, you know, wouldn't that be kind of the basis of a lot of that is getting help for, and I'm like, yeah, but they specifically attack your identity and ego. Like it's not like CBT therapy. Like it's not, it's the same thing applied to everyone regardless. But I mean, they, as you confess to things or what you're guilty of or whatever, they use that against you essentially to continue keeping you in that state of fear and, you know, going along with it, you know, doing your program. I feel really like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat right now.
I understand what you're saying. I definitely do. And it definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
You shouldn't feel like that. You shouldn't feel like that. I know what you're saying, and I fucking agree with the assessment.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically the work that this is from like the early 60s. And there's Edgar Schein, who also came up with like a process. His is like 2 or 3 steps, or 3 steps though. And then there's Singer's process, which is like 6 to 8 steps, I believe. But they all are very similar. Yeah. And this is when you get into sort of like cult indoctrination and, you know, thought reform, brainwashing, coercive persuasion, whatever you want to call it. But that's so key. And the way that it's so specific to the T.T.I is that it has to work in a way that it's for 2 different individuals. Yeah. And you have to balance that because you've got the parent and you've got the child. And they're experiencing 2 different things. But you have to condition them both, but in different ways and for different reasons, obviously. And it's basically kind of taking advantage of the fact that the child, unfortunately, you know, as a, hi, baby. Sir, can I help you? Can I help you? Oh, is the weather bad? Oh, baby. Oh, you can't. Are you serious right now? Billy, can
Hi, buddy.
Oh my God. Baby, you have to get down. You can't sit. Yeah, he's trying to sit in my lap. Okay. Sure. Big doggo in my lap.
He's just saying hi. Just saying hi. But yeah, I definitely agree. And they have to keep it so, because they're both going through seminars, but they're having different experiences because obviously one's an adult, one's not being forced to do it as well. Yeah, that's the other thing too. And I bring that up whenever I talk about like boot camps, right? Like there are like military type of stuff, is that people in the military can leave. Yeah, and they chose to go there. Yeah, and they also chose that. I mean, it might be a process of you know, like, I mean, but that's just, you know, more of just formalities. But yeah, and that's part, like, that brings up one of the really important things that needs to change and be made available, is that there needs to be, like, children need to have access to phones so that they can call an advocate, someone for help. If they have a family attorney, like they should not be, that a phone should not be a privilege. That baby. I want to put him in the kennel. Okay. Communication in general shouldn't be a privilege. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Like, you know, if something's happening, like, you need to be able to tell someone.
But, and then this is just what gets even more screwed up, is that they then tell the parents, realize that your child's going to tell you that they're being abused, like, and that they're going to be complaining about it. Well, of course, because it is. Of course, they're going to tell you that.
But why would you even need to say that if there was no abuse going on? You know what I mean? Like, why would you even need to think that they might say something like that? Like,
yeah, and that's, I see. I wasn't like, I know that a lot of kids that got sent to these places, like, they may have had a criminal record, or like, actually, like, had or was going to be going to jail or whatever, and was a danger or something like that. And then there were some kids that were just sad. I was just sad. So kind of being treated, put in that, and then kind of receiving the similar treatment as if I was some kind of criminal, instead of, no, I kind of need love and affection. That really messed with me. Like, I committed a crime by being sad. And I was being punished for it, when I was like, no, I like, that is the exact opposite of what I need. Like, I wasn't misbehaving. Like,
they automatically assume that. They automatically assume that you were misbehaving. Oh, you must have been a fucking horrible kid. That's why you got sent here. Da-da-da-da. It's like, no. I knew a couple kids. I knew one kid in general that his parents just didn't want him. He straight said, like, oh yeah, my parents just didn't want me, so they sent me here. And I was just like, bro, that's hella fucked up. Like, that's fucked.
Yeah, I mean,
so people just sending their kids there to get rid of them. So it's essentially like, in a way, it's an abortion, except you're not killing them. You know what I mean? You're essentially like, you're giving them away.
Yeah. It's kind of, I mean, I don't think people should really be able to just, being a parent isn't a job that you should just easily be able to quit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one that you should be able to get fired from,
yeah,
perhaps, but I don't think that, and that's unfortunately still kind of a way that I feel is that my mother sort of just didn't want to, be a parent to me anymore. And, ever since, like, I've never really had any sort of relationship with my mother, and we go years without talking, and we'll try to, and then it comes around to the elephant in the room, and because it's going to. But I mean, especially with my health getting as bad as it has, and like, I'm getting I finally get surgery at the end of the month. I'm very excited about it. But even being kind of faced with that, and because I don't know what they might find, because it's also a diagnostic thing. It's like, you'd think that a parent would want to be there for their child, right? Like, and my mother has no interest. Like, and it just reminds me of like how it's always been. And I don't know if she realizes, first off, I don't think she realizes truly what it is that I experienced and went through. I don't think she has any idea of the severity of it. I think she realizes it was really messed up and weird, but I don't think she understands how abusive it was. Like, I don't think she really gets that part, that what I experienced was essentially, and I mean, this is what many do, is not only, not having any civil rights, but not having any human rights. Like, to know that that's something that happens in this country, and it's an industry.
Yeah, multi-billion-dollar industry. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and my mother doesn't get that, and she kind of doesn't want to. Like, she just wants to, bury her head in the sand and just not be confronted with it. She's the kind of person that has been like, oh, you know, this is stressing me out. I'm like, it should. It should. Like, you can't just dodge stress when it happens. Sometimes you got to deal with shit. And you've had the luxury and privilege of not having to. But, you know, like, at the very least, you know, it would at least let me know that in some way you care about me, to at least feel, you know, apologetic for the fact that I've experienced, like, I went through that. And to say that, like,
just acknowledge your feelings, acknowledge what you went through, acknowledge your feelings, don't act like it didn't happen.
Yeah, because that's what she wants to do. And I mean, it's not like I want to, you know, have her continue to live with it and like repeat it to herself every day or something. No, it's just, I want her to just at least recognize it and come to terms with it and let me know that, you know, and it would also be really, one thing that would mean so much to me is if she actually like understood, wow, considering that and what you've been through in life and the fact that it hasn't completely destroyed you, like actually understanding that I might be the opposite of a fuck up.
Yeah. Do you have a relationship with your dad, with your father?
No, he passed away in 2016. I was also not close with him, but yeah. And I mean, he definitely didn't know how to parent me or understand me in any. My dad also had an 8th grade education, and was incredibly racist and bigoted. So that was kind of unpleasant to be around. But
probably not the best role model either.
Yeah, but I mean, he was still my father.
Yeah.
And the last time I had tried to connect with him in some way, he actually did. It was when I was homeless, and he actually did get me a bus ticket to go from where I was. It was from Oregon to Louisiana. I was on a Greyhound bus for 3 days.
Yeah.
And I got there, and you know, I stayed with him, and he had an extra bedroom. I stayed there. I got a job. You know, like I was doing everything I should be doing. And I wasn't just staying at the house all the time. Like I found people to go hang out with and get out of the house. And I didn't even have a car. And after 3 weeks, the girlfriend that he had, which he had been with for quite some time, she did not like me at all. And after 3 weeks, she gave him the ultimatum of, she moves out or I do. And I didn't get kicked out on the street. I got kicked out on the gravel. It was that isolated there. There's a pasture across, like, oh my God. Like, and that was in 2008.
Yeah.
And I mean, he just didn't have the capacity to really understand anything about me.
Yeah.
There was just such a disconnect there. But I mean, then that was really the last time I had ever talked to him. But I mean, with my mother, she would know that I would be on the street homeless. She would know that like I was having issues with, you know, and she didn't want to have anything to do with it. She didn't want to help. And
do you still you hold on? That still affects you a lot to this day.
Oh yeah,
I can tell.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, especially with recently, like having surgery, and I mean, I haven't been able to work since the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Just that gets to me a lot. That she wouldn't, because my mother, my mother is very comfortable, and it's not like I'm expecting her to support me, or just that I'm entitled to but I mean, I'm her child, and I physically cannot work, but there is a solution. Fortunately, like there will be, things will improve in some capacity. But the fact that, this was really bittersweet, because for a moment, because I had spoken with my sister initially, for a moment, I actually thought they were going to be helpful. And I was like, I'll make a list of like what I'm expecting and like when things are. And I'm like, oh, they're going to see what the expenses are, and like, why would I be sending them a list of them? And apparently that's not what was ever intended. I'm like, why am I sending this to you? Like, why am I writing this out? And I'm like, do you want to just send, like, help out with groceries or whatever? Like, you'd send me a gift card. Like, I mean, everything's fine now, fortunately. But even my sister was just kind of decided, like, no, I can't do that. I'm like, you just flew overnight to where my mother is, and you're telling me you like, that wasn't that's what's heartbreaking to me.
If your mom was here right now, what would you say to her?
Oh gosh, you're getting deep with this one.
I mean, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But...
I guess it would be, I hope one day you actually are proud of me.
Do you feel like she's not proud of you?
Oh, I think she's absolutely embarrassed and ashamed. And I don't know why.
Okay.
I mean, part of it could have been like my sexuality, which I mean, as far as it appears on the outside, I really just kind of come across as heterosexual anyway, or maybe just like, it's not something I really think about or whatever. But for a while, I identified actually as gay, and was for many years. And that was whenever I was younger. Like, it actually, things kind of happened in reverse. But I've never really thought too hard about that. It's just kind of like, there are people I'm attracted to, and some of them just have different parts and equipment.
Yeah. It shouldn't be something that somebody judges you for. Do you feel like she maybe didn't like you because of that?
I think it was that, like, not that specifically, but because it wasn't the norm.
Okay.
In addition to like just me being very eccentric, I guess, and like, she really kind of just, like, my sister is very like just kind of a normie, like just really normal, and I'm just I there's just different interests, really, but there's no way to communicate that effectively, and I think that that's what's been so difficult about it, and like interest that I've had and everything. But it's also, I it's not that I want to discount their own experiences, but I don't think they realize that they have not endured the level of trauma that I have. And I don't think they have any idea what that's been like. Like, I think they believe that it's comparable, and they really have no idea.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, and I don't know that I would ever really like tell them, like, why that it's significantly different. But I mean, they should know some things, but being in fight or flight mode for various reasons over extended periods of time, I mean, that's something that they've not had to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your mom, like, maybe is just confused for some reason, like confused about how she feels, or just doesn't know how to say how she feels? Or do you feel like she's more like she just doesn't care? Like, what kind of feeling do you get?
I think she could care. I just think it means having somebody that she understands, but kind of like a translator in a way, like
Yeah.
somebody that acts as a sort of like a mediator.
Yeah.
Sort of back my what I'm saying, and kind of contribute to helping her like grasp that, and that it's very legit, like this. I think that that's what kind of needs to happen, because my own word to her is not sufficient. I'm not really taken seriously, and it's kind of like I'm making. They think I'm being like overly dramatic or something.
Did you ever do anything to like break their trust or anything like that?
No.
Okay. I'm just curious because I know I did with my parents.
Yeah, I've not stolen from them. I've not like, uh, I've not like run off or anything. Like I've always been trusted. It was just they always referred to it as my lifestyle or the way that I lived, which I was just kind of like a eccentric little hobo. Like that was really it. I just enjoyed moving around and traveling, and I liked trying new things. They don't. They're scared of them.
Yeah.
Like these are people that don't want to go out of the country ever in their life.
Maybe you intimidate them.
That's maybe in a way, but I mean that's the case for many other interactions that I have with people. But with them, I think it's just we're on these totally different levels. Yeah. And a lot of that has to do maybe with intelligence. And it's not me trying to necessarily insult them, but I am pretty big brained.
Well, also, you've been through so much shit. I feel like the people with people like us that have been through so much shit, we've gained wisdom. I feel like, and wisdom is like you can't get that from a book. Like you get that from through experience. You know what I mean? So I feel like people like you and I are definitely smarter, quote unquote, than the average bunch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that has kind of what motivates me, what helps me kind of continuing to persevere and not give up, which was, definitely a risk for a good part of my life, is the fact that it is very important to me to, and I don't know if you know who Viktor Frankl is or heard of his work or anything.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I'm not. What books has he written? Because I know the name. What book?
Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah. I've heard of that book. I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a pretty amazing person. He was an amazing person. For the audience, he was an Auschwitz survivor, and
yeah, I know who you're talking about now. Yeah.
And he talked about how he was able to make it through that, and even applied that to something called logotherapy, which is giving meaning to suffering in your life. And that's one of the things that has been really key for me is, instead of being like, why me? Like, I'm like, because like of these things that I've experienced for whatever reasons, the fact that I still continue on, the fact that I do not let that stop me. And the fact that I actually make it a point to overcome that and have it fuel what I do, I think it's really important to help illustrate what embodies being a survivor. Because it's not just that you made it through the experience and you still have a pulse. It's also that you know that the rest of your life will never be the same, that was taken from you, you did not decide that, and now you have to face that. And knowing that and still persevering, that is like incredibly important to really be in touch with that part of yourself that is a survivor. And it's important for me to illustrate that and embody that in every way that I can, which is why I dedicate myself to researching and doing this kind of work, because I feel that it would probably be really, really hard to find someone with the assortment of skills that I have to be able to pull off what I'm doing. So I feel an obligation. I feel like this is my calling. This is what I need to do. And I will, and I'm in the position where I have been through these awful things, but that is what makes me actually uniquely valuable. So it's also, the other part of it is in a way, thinking about my abusers, I like to wake up every morning knowing that me continuing on in the way that I do terrifies them every day.
Yeah.
For
sure.
Be like, like that bitch just won't no, you helped. Yeah. I have figured out a way to make it so that you helped, motherfucker.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Let's see. So, do you believe that these places should be or even could be regulated right now, knowing what you know now, or do you believe that they should just all be shut down?
I think that it can't really be either or, because both is going to present a situation that's going to be really difficult to manage. Because if you shut everything down, then that eliminates what is a service that is needed, but however poorly executed, clearly. If you attempt to regulate everything and pass legislation and laws, that's not necessarily going to fix the problem. And I remind people that, just because something is a law doesn't mean that it's going to stop. Otherwise, people would not be murdered. It would just cease to. Yeah. So, I mean, people still will break the law. They don't care. However, I think that the more that the more that it is made transparent, the more that the general public as a whole understands it and realizes that this is a thing. Because I think that is really what needs to be, when I look at the facilities that have been shut down, the catalyst for the majority of them has been exposure. Mm-hmm. Whether it starts with their local paper and then, goes to the news or whatever, shining a big light on it. That's what's worked. And I think that it's the general public that needs to know, not just, that's why I don't really create this and cater it to necessarily survivors, because y'all already know this shit. Yeah. I do it for, families that are kind of, whether they're thinking about that, or even neighbors or community members that are concerned and want to look into it, or just people in general that want to understand it, because part of what I'm doing also is breaking it down in an interesting way, so that it's not just peer review articles that people aren't going to just spend their Sundays reading. I don't expect that. but I'm the nerd that will do that, and we'll make a little short video on it so it's easier to digest for people.
All right. And I was going to ask, I'm asking the audience for feedback too. So comment down below if you have any ideas about this, but I'm trying to figure out how to get this out to a more broader public demographic instead of just like mainly all survivors. I mean, I love having survivors as subscribers and supporters. I love you all. Okay. Thank you all for your support, but I'm trying to branch out. I'm trying to get this as many places as possible. So if you or like any of the audience members have any suggestions as to how to get this out to like the general public easier, do you have any ideas?
I have a lot of ideas. Yeah, I have a lot of ideas. And it's, I mean, part of it is, you know, getting that YouTube algorithm to favor you, which is hard for a channel with this kind of subject material, but there's a way to pull it off.
Well, I will say I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I have no negative. I have like no thumbs down. All of my shit's
that
like
wouldn't affect it.
Okay.
It's the user engagement.
Okay.
It's user engagement, and then like the more people comment on the video and interact, that helps.
Okay.
And then consistent uploading, and then also like covering topics that are, you know, popular at the moment. So
yeah,
that's why a lot of like T channels, I hate saying that, but that's why a lot of them are rather successful, is because they'll touch on stuff that's currently a hot topic. But yeah, I have a few ideas. I won't share them publicly, but
okay,
yeah.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, oh yeah, did you have any more crazy things that you found out about like in your work?
I mean, I have like nearly 50 gigs of that, and what I'll do is, as I kind of get this up and going, then obviously you can like link to it so people can view it.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, the stuff that gets to me, that's just kind of easy to like, I hesitate whenever it comes to naming really specific individuals and companies and stuff, because I don't want more targets on my back. But like a lot of the people that are kind of pulling the strings, the people who created and ran the seminars for W.W.A.S.P, most of those people now run seminars in China. It's real interesting. One of the organizations is called SourcePoint Training, and it's on a list, at least on Wikipedia, as far as a list of LGATs, which, you know, you don't ever want to be on a list with something like Nexium.
Yeah.
And looking through, see, like legal federal, this is all like all the lawsuits and everything. But I have like a lot of videos. I have like police body cam footage. A lot of that's kind of troubling though. The research and studies, but yeah, directory by state. I have a separate list, which is like a list of 1,300 facilities. Now, whether they should be really on the list or not, I don't know, but I have their updated basic info. But basically, everything is kind of organized by state, and I also want it to be organized by like the type of facility it is. But what was I going to say? It really just boils down to all the seminar stuff and the weird like exercises they have us do. The fact that transport services are a thing and allowed. Oh, here's something, because for some reason it's not on YouTube anymore, but it is on Vimeo. There's a documentary that the BBC did in it was like 2014, but it came to the US in 2019. And it covers a like boot camp style place that's not too far from me. and it's run by this like real good old boy ex-Marine that's like, well, we just need to whip them into shape. They're in my house now. I'm like, well, actually, he's in one of your tents. And he looks really unhappy. Yeah, they focused on these, and what the BBC did was, I mean, they presented it and showing parents that were like mortified, like they included that shit, which is one of the reasons I think it's not on YouTube, is that one of the facilities are like, yeah, we don't want people to see. That's not the kind of, we like our deceptive marketing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help. Oh, here's something kind of cool though. So all of the places that are like ranches and that have equine therapy, and there's supposed to be a ton of horses and all this shit, and they're really, that you show up and there's like a donkey or something, I don't know. There is an organization, I guess I would call it an organization more than anything, that does that correctly.
Oh yeah, when done correctly, that can be actually really beneficial. I actually have a friend of mine who does that in Sedona, Arizona.
Oh, this one is called the Compton Cowboys.
Oh wow, okay, no, not bad, but I'm just talking about equine therapy. Like horses can be really healing.
Yeah, and that's yeah, I mean, and clearly it's working with it started working with the Black community in South LA and Compton, but
awesome.
they have, you know, former like gang affiliations and what have you, and they translated that instead over to rescuing horses, taking care of them, and they ride the streets of Compton on horses. And it's just like, and everybody, like, they love it and it works for them.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, it's not like some kind of huge like therapeutic modality. Like this is something, because I mean, it's not like a residential thing or whatever, but it also illustrates this very, very important point that the most effective forms of treatment are community based. It's staying within the home, or at least near it. Like the moment you send your child away, like that decreases the odds of anything getting better by a massive percentage. Like that is, it's incredibly ineffective. Community-based programs and mentorship programs are what have been shown to be what truly helps at-risk youth, or, you know, any child struggling with the variety of conditions that these places say they can just fix.
Yeah.
Like that's really what it is. And a lot of it, like, there's also, you know, a lot of people that have gone to these places, they had trauma before, and that was really a big part of why, you know, kind of they were struggling. So adding more trauma to it, just, you know, why would you want to do that? People, you know, they don't know that that's what's happening, at least for the most part. So it's addressing that, and it's being able to help a child address that in a way that they feel safe and comfortable. And then that boils down to, you know, the issues with like CPS and such, which is another absolute failure and really unfortunate. But yeah, community-based mentorship programs.
Yeah, I've heard that foster care homes aren't that good either.
Yeah.
From what I've heard. I mean, I could be wrong. But.
Well, there's some overlap with those programs and the T.T.I. And I forget in what states that they can do that. But yeah, there's a little bit of overlap there. It's with like Sequel, for example, or UHS, which runs Provo. That's one reason also why they have like more money, is because they Have lobbyists and such that kind of help them out with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
Did you have any other things that you wanted to point out? Anything else that stick out to you? Or that you want people to know?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, I kind of look at this and it's just there's so much of it really. It really just kind of breaks down to seeing whenever you see all the connections and who's tied to who and in what way. That's what I'm really excited to be able to present, is people realizing like, wait, they're all together. I'm like, all in the same bed. Like,
Yeah.
And at that point, like they can't deny that at that point. Like, that's just that is a fact. You two run this LLC together, and it exists as the accounting entity of all these programs, and the person who's the accountant behind it, have been behind a ton of scams, and here's the lawsuit against them. Like, what you gonna say about that? Like, so it's risky, of course, but these are boomers that don't know how to computer, so I also have the upper hand there.
For sure. Okay. Well, let me see here. I wanted to make a couple of announcements at the end here. And thank you guys for watching. First of all, we are halfway to 2K views, so keep it up. Keep up the hustle and grind on the views. Share these videos. Like, when you're watching these videos, share them on your social media. Like, share them to as many places as you can. For real. Just get this out there as much as possible. I'm really trying to expand into like the public space and like everybody really like, and so I need you guys' help with that, and girls. Let's see. And besides that, yeah, just keep it up. And this is awesome. I love doing these interviews, even though they're sometimes draining emotionally. Even though, like, I don't know. I wanted to point that out too, is that, sorry I haven't been uploading every day. I've had a bunch of people like not contact me the day of, and like, or they'll like flake out, or they'll, have to reschedule or something. So between that and just, I wanted to take like a day off the other day. So just because I'm an empath and I feel everything like a million times, like I literally feel everybody's energy. It's another reason I can't really hold a regular job, is because when I walk into a room, I feel all their energies, and it's just overwhelming. And so yeah, thank you guys for your support and everything. And if you ever want to do part 2, we will make that happen. That'd be cool.
I mean, and I'll help you. We'll start learning how to edit videos and get you set up with that in whatever way I can. Helping you run that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, because I have that logo that somebody made me, right? I want to like incorporate, at least, if nothing, like to start off with, I want to at least incorporate a title card in here, so I can have the title like straight out of BS podcast, and then come into just a regular interview. So be cool. Yeah. But yeah, I want to learn how to do all that. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, so I'll certainly help you out.
For sure. Thank you so much for your time, and you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you guys for tuning in. Peace.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yep. Don't forget. All right, bye.